The first time Commander Serit Vale stole a starship, she did it barefoot, half-conscious, and with blood in one eye. The second time, she did it on purpose. By then the alarms were already screaming through Veyra Station, red light pulsing over polished steel corridors and rain-streaked observation glass. Security shutters slammed down one deck at a time. Docking clamps locked. Armed response teams flooded the transit spine. And Serit, blue-skinned, horned, exhausted, furious, ran straight toward the danger instead of away from it. Her skin was the dark, saturated blue of deep ocean at midnight, almost black in shadow, luminous under white light. Two smooth horns swept back from her temples in elegant arcs, banded near the base with thin rings of tarnished silver that marked her clan and the dead she carried with her. Her hair, braided close for travel, had partly broken loose and now snapped behind her as she sprinted. A stolen data prism was clenched in one hand. The prism was small enough to fit in a palm. 3 sectors had already died for it. Seal Dock 7, a voice barked over the station grid. Repeat, Seal Dock 7. Target is armed, highly dangerous, and wanted for sabotage, sedition, and the murder of a Directorate officer. Serit laughed once, breathless and bitter. The officer had tried to put a shock collar on a 12-year-old refugee. She had not felt especially guilty. A burst door crashed shut ahead of her. She didn't slow. At the last second she planted a hand on the wall, vaulted the service railing, and dropped 2 meters into a maintenance trench full of coolant pipes and cable ducts. She landed hard, rolled, came up limping, and kept moving. Above her, boots thundered past. Where did she go? She was just there. She can't vanish. Serit hooked a grin despite the pain in her ribs. You'd be surprised, she muttered. Then the trench ended in a grated drop and she saw the truth below her. Dock 7 was no longer a dock. It was a kill box. Security drones hovered in a grid around the hangar entrance. 2 gun platforms tracked the main corridor. A customs crawler had been repositioned sideways as mobile cover. Whoever commanded the response teams had guessed exactly where she was headed and decided to make an example of her. Of course, Serit breathed. Of course you did. She crouched in the dark with station sirens pulsing through the metal around her and forced herself to think. The prism in her hand held proof, financial routes, transit maps, contractor codes, flesh market inventories, signed approvals from the Ordo Directorate, the corporate government machine that smiled in public and trafficked the poor in private. Refugee transfers. Labor auctions. Biological acquisitions. Entire families categorized as resources. She had not meant to find all of it. She had only meant to free one boy from a processing cage. Instead she had blown open a ledger that could torch half the inner belt. Now everyone wanted her dead before she found someone honest enough to leak it. A fresh wave of pain lanced through her side. She looked down. The cut there was bad. One of the security rounds had grazed her on the cargo deck and the blood had soaked through her shirt, warm and sticky beneath her jacket. Wonderful, she said softly. Dying would really simplify their paperwork. Her calm bead crackled once. She froze. The channel should have been dead. She had burned every contact on Veyra 2 months ago and buried the last friendly frequency after the Ash Quay raid. Then a voice, dry and amused, slid into her ear. You sound unhappy. Serit's eyes narrowed. No. Yet somehow still alive. Impressive. She knew that voice. Not well. Too well. Kale, she said, with the sort of exhausted hatred reserved for recurring disasters. Tell me you're not on this station. Define on. Physically present, armed, and about to make my day worse. A pause. Then yes. Serit closed her eyes once. Kale Arden was a thief, smuggler, occasional information broker, and relentless opportunist with a face too handsome to trust and morals that shifted like weather. They had worked together twice. Been betrayed once and maybe saved once, depending on which memory she was in the mood to believe. "You sold me out?" she asked flatly. "If I had, the drones would already be firing into your trench." He sounded offended. "I'm hurt." "You'll recover." "Probably." "Listen carefully. There's a maintenance hatch 30 meters to your left. It opens into the environmental spine. That gets you above Dock 7. And then? And then I do something reckless and attractive." Serit let out a tired breath that was almost a laugh. "I hate that I know exactly how serious you are." "You're welcome." The calm clicked out. For 3 seconds she considered ignoring him on principle. Then heavy boots clanged above the trench again, closer this time, and principle lost the argument. She ran. The hatch was half concealed behind old fiber bundles and a bank of coolant valves. She ripped it open, scraped through, and climbed a narrow ladder into the environmental spine. A long service shaft suspended above the dock behind climate ducts and power conduits. Through the vent slats below she could see the whole trap. Dock 7 stretched wide and silver under emergency lights. Security teams held the perimeter. Drones hovered at shoulder height. At the center stood an inspector in a gray Directorate coat, one hand clasped behind his back, the other holding a bullhorn with faint theatrical pleasure. "Serit Vale," he called, voice booming. "You are cornered. Surrender the data prism and I can still guarantee you a trial." Serit crouched over him in the dark, lip curling. "A trial," she whispered. "How generous." "Your species was admitted to the station under provisional protection," the inspector continued. "Don't worsen matters for your people." That did it. Cold fury went through her so cleanly it felt almost clarifying. Her people. As if the Directorate had not bombed the reef cities of her moon under anti-piracy licenses. As if horned, blue-skinned migrants were not searched twice, paid half, and buried nameless when station work killed them. As if provisional protection was not just a prettier phrase for temporary usefulness. She shifted, meaning to drop down and cut his speech short permanently. Then the hangar doors behind the inspector blew inward. The explosion was controlled, elegant, and wildly unnecessary. Air punched through the dock in a roaring gust. Security teams staggered. Drones lost formation. Smoke rolled across the deck, backlit by sparks. And through it all, a battered courier ship rammed nose first past the threshold on emergency thrusters, skidding sideways over the floor. It was long, lean, ugly in a functional way, patched across 3 registries, and painted the color of old gunmetal. Along its hull, half the ID markings had been burned off or scraped away. Serit recognized it immediately. "The Dreg's Mercy," she said. A cargo ramp slammed down before the ship had stopped moving. Cale Arden stood at the top of it with one hand on the railing and a pulse carbine in the other, coat flaring in the wash from the engines like he'd planned the entrance for an audience. Dark hair. Scar under one eye. Smile full of bad intentions. "Commander," he called. "Need a ride?" The inspector spun in disbelief. "Open fire." Everything happened at once. Security guns flashed. Cale vanished back into the ship before the first volley reached him. The Mercy's hidden turrets woke with a predatory whine and answered the dock with surgical bursts that clipped drones out of the air and shredded gun platforms without striking the people behind them. Smoke deepened. Someone screamed for cover. Serit didn't think. She moved. She ripped out of the environmental spine, dropped to a loading crane, hit a suspended fuel canister hard enough to swing it, rode the arc downward, and landed on top of the customs crawler. Every eye in the hangar found her. For one brief, almost satisfying moment, the entire dock stared at the blue-horn fugitive they had been hunting through the station. Blood on her face. Jacket torn. Data prism in hand. Then she kicked off the crawler and ran straight through the gunfire. Her body knew speed better than fear. Bolts carved past her shoulders. One scorched the floor by her foot. Another clipped her horn ring with a hot metallic ping. She hit a drone mid-stride, seized it by the chassis, and threw it into two advancing guards. Kale's ship guns cleared a lane. She took it. The inspector stepped into her path with a sidearm drawn. Stop. Serit hit him so hard the bullhorn flew one way and the man flew another. She made the ramp. Hands caught her forearms and hauled her inside just as Kale slapped the controls. The cargo ramp began rising under a hail of fire. "You're bleeding on my deck," he said. "You're late. I prefer dramatic. You prefer hearing your own legend." He grinned. "That too." Then the hangar shook. A heavy magnetic lock snapped onto the Mercy's hull. Warning lights exploded red across the cargo bay. Kale's grin vanished. "That's bad." "How bad?" "They've tethered us to the dock." The ship lurched as exterior clamps engaged fully. Engines screamed against the hold and got nowhere. Serit looked at the sealed cargo bay, at the smoke, at the trembling deck, at the security teams already regrouping outside the half-closed ramp. "Tell me," she said, breathing hard, "you have a plan that doesn't end with both of us dissected by Directorate auditors." Kale met her eyes. "I had one," he said. "Then you brought the entire station." The ramp slammed shut. And Dock 7 began cutting into the hull. Kale's ship smelled like engine grease, burnt wiring, and expensive lies. Serit liked it more than she wanted to admit. The cargo bay lights strobed while automatic systems screamed damage reports in 3 languages. Somewhere beneath them, magnetic cutters bit into the outer plating with an ugly metallic shriek. Security teams pounded up onto the sealed ramp and began trying to breach manually. Kale was already moving toward the engineering ladder. "Can you stand?" "I arrived standing." "Wonderful. Go be useful." She followed him through the ship's central spine at a half-run, one hand braced against the wall every time the cutters hit a structural rib and made the whole hull vibrate. The Mercy was bigger inside than it looked from the dock, but only barely. Narrow corridors, exposed cabling, a galley held together by magnetic locks, 2 cramped bunks, a med alcove, a cockpit with mismatched instrumentation, and an engine room that looked like a treaty violation. Kale slid into the pilot's pit and lit up a tactical map. Dock 7 blinked around them in angry red layers. "They've got us anchored at 3 points," he said. "Mag clamps port, stern, and underbelly. Cutters on the port side. Security teams stacking at the forward ramp." Serit pressed a hand to her bleeding side. "Then blow the port wall and roll free." "With what?" He glanced back. "I used my tasteful entrance explosives already." She held up the data prism. "This was worth you risking Veyra Station." Kale's expression changed. "Not to greed. To calculation." "That depends," he said slowly, "on whether it contains what I think it contains. It contains enough to bury the Ordo Directorate under every tribunal in the belt." He stared at her for one beat, then another. "You really did it." "I was there when I did it, yes." Outside, metal screamed again. Kale came back to the moment. "Fine. We survive first, topple governments later. Can you shoot?" Serit gave him a flat look. "Right," he said. "Insensitive question." He slapped open a locker beneath the console and tossed her a compact plasma cutter and a shock pistol. She checked both automatically. "Where?" "Belly access tunnel. There's an exterior maintenance port directly above the underclamp." He zoomed the ship schematic. "If you go outside and sever its power conduit, I can twist the Mercy hard enough to shear the other 2. Serit stared at him. Go outside. In your current mood, you may enjoy it. Vacuum enjoys me less. It's a station dock. Partial atmosphere, mag-graded hull space. You'll be able to breathe for at least some of it. That is not comforting. Serit. His voice sharpened for the first time. If we sit here, they board in 3 minutes. The pounding on the hull intensified as if to underline him. She exhaled once through her teeth. Fine. But if I die outside your ship, I am haunting you professionally. I look forward to the critique. She turned for the ladder, then paused. Why are you here, Kale? A strange thing crossed his face. Gone quickly, but real. Because, he said, eyes back on the tactical display, someone needed to be. That was not an answer. It was worse than one. She didn't have time to push it. The belly access tube was barely wider than her shoulders and full of cold air, sharp metal, and old repair tags. She crawled through with the plasma cutter clipped to her belt and the shock pistol strapped tight to her thigh. When she opened the external port, Veyra Station spread beneath her in a dizzying web of lights, gantries, and dock scaffolds floating inside the vast cylindrical bay. The Mercy's hull curved below her, scarred and patched and vibrating under strain. The underclamp was a black industrial block the size of a shuttle, fused to the ship's plating by magnetic legs. Its power conduit ran exposed along one side beneath a shielded casing. Serit clipped her boots to the hull and moved. Station wind tugged at her hair. Far below, service skiffs were already repositioning, maybe to cut off escape, maybe to witness a wreck. Through the dock glass beyond, the stars were hard white points against infinity. She had grown up on Neretha's moon, where the sea stretched below floating reef towers and the night sky reflected in black water so perfectly that children sometimes learned the stars twice, once above, once beneath. Her grandmother used to say their horns were shaped like currents, not crowns. We are made to move around force, not through it. Serit reached the clamp and put the cutter to work. The casing glowed, spat, resisted. Her side throbbed. Sweat slid down her spine under the station chill. Then voices crackled over an external security channel. She's outside. Port underside. Take the shot. Serit looked up. A security skiff swung under the dock scaffold with 2 marksmen braced at the rail. Oh, come on, she said. The first shot blew sparks off the hull by her knee. She flattened, cut one mag boot loose, swung under the conduit one-handed, and fired the shock pistol upward. The pulse struck the skiff's underside. The craft jerked violently sideways into a maintenance arm with a shower of sparks. One marksman went over the rail and vanished into the lower gantry screaming. The second steadied, took aim again. Serit tore the conduit free. Power flashed white through the clamp. Every magnetic leg released at once. Inside the Mercy, Kale saw the opening. The ship's engines roared into a full, furious burn. The hull twisted hard enough to wrench Serit sideways along the plating. One of the remaining clamps sheared off with a scream of metal. The last held for half a second more, then snapped. The Mercy lurched free. And Serit, still clipped by one boot, swung in a brutal arc beneath the ship as it rolled toward the hangar threshold. Kale, she shouted into the comm, a little warning would have been romantic. I assumed you like surprises. The ship blasted through Dock 7's force gate, took 3 direct hits from the station batteries, and punched into open traffic lanes with Serit still dangling beneath it. Veyra Station turned below her, a colossal rotating wheel studded with habitation rings, industrial spines, and glittering commercial decks wrapped around a central dark core. Defense drones erupted from launch tubes. Sirens flashed across transit beacons. Civilian vessels scattered. Kale's voice snapped into her ear. Can you get back inside? Depends. Can you fly less like a criminal? Not under pressure. She hauled herself hand over hand toward the emergency latch while the stars and station lights spun around her. A defense drone streaked toward her starboard side. She saw it too late. The drone fired. Something hit it from above, a harpoon cable from one of the Mercy's hidden turret housings. The drone tumbled away trailing sparks. Serit blinked. You harpooned a military drone. Improvisation is an art. She reached the latch, slammed it, rolled back into the belly access tube, and lay there for a second with her chest heaving. Her calm went quiet. Too quiet. Serit pulled herself back toward the cockpit. By the time she got there, blood loss had made the edges of everything unnaturally bright. Kale was fighting the controls with both hands while station patrol craft swarmed behind them in pursuit, blue engine trails like a hunting school. Where's your jump lane? She asked. Blocked. Alternate? Also blocked. Excellent. I thought you appreciated honesty. The forward screen flashed with a new signal, an incoming encrypted burst, priority override, unknown source. Kale swore. That can't be good. He opened it. A woman's face appeared on the central pane, gray-haired, severe, beautifully dressed in the kind of restrained black that only the truly powerful could afford. Her expression when she saw Serit was not anger. It was interest. Commander Vale, she said, voice soft and terrible. You have made this much more public than necessary. Serit felt cold all the way through. She knew that face. Director Isara then, architect of the Ordo Transit Accords, patron saint of civilized trade routes, smiling stateswoman in every polished speech wall between the belt and the core. And, if the prism was authentic, the hand signing off on the sale of displaced labor populations. You should have stayed in the archive, Isara said. Serit leaned forward despite the pain. You should have burned with it. A tiny smile touched the director's mouth. Defiance. Charming. But you have something that belongs to me. Kale muttered, I hate it when friends call. Isara ignored him. Return the prism and I may yet limit the response. Serit laughed, harsh and incredulous. Response? You're chasing a wounded woman in a salvage courier with station guns. You are not a woman, Isara said calmly. You are an event. The words landed harder than they should have. Kale's hands tightened on the controls. Isara went on. You have 1 hour, Commander. Bring the prism to Kepri Drift and we will negotiate. Refuse, and every port in this quadrant receives your biometric profile and a kill order. Your people on Veyra, on Sable Reach, on Hush Market, on the migrant reef stations, they will all discover what your righteousness costs. The transmission ended. For several seconds only engine noise filled the cockpit. Then Kale said, very quietly, that was bad. Serit stared at the dead screen. Her face had gone still in the way it only did when rage ran too deep to show easily. Kepri Drift was not a place honest ships visited. A dead refinery field in the shadow of an ion storm. Smugglers, privateers, disappeared cargo, all wrapped in enough interference to make long-range scans nearly useless. Trap, she said. Certainly. She'll kill us if we go. Likely. She'll kill my people if I don't. Kale looked at her then, really looked. Not at the fugitive everyone hunted. Not at the commander she had once been in the reef militias of Neretha's moon. Not at the woman who had spent 5 years torching Ordo supply lines and liberating indenture transports until the Directorate painted her as a terrorist because admitting she was effective would have been worse. At her. You can't trust a word she says, he murmured. I know. You can't hand over that prism. I know. She wants you isolated. Serit turned to the viewport, where Veyra Station had become a distant wheel of light against the dark. My clan fled the tidal fires on Nereth when I was 11, she said. We were told the transit corridors were safe. We were told registration meant shelter. We were told labor contracts were temporary. Her fingers curled around the prism. My mother died in a recycler dock on Bell Ash because a supervisor decided horned workers could breathe dust one shift longer than everyone else. My brother disappeared in an audit convoy and never came back. So if Isara then thinks she can threaten my people into silence. She stopped. Kale waited. Then Serit finished, voice sharp as broken glass. She should have killed me when she had the chance. Kale's mouth tilted, not quite a smile. There you are. She looked at him. Set course for Kepri Drift. He blinked. You're serious. I'm done running from polished monsters. She'll come armored, shielded, and ugly with reinforcements. Then be better at being a criminal. He stared for one heartbeat, two. Then he laughed softly, like someone recognizing the shape of a disaster and deciding to admire it. All right, Commander, he said, turning the Mercy toward the dead zone between stars. Let's go negotiate. Kepri Drift looked like the ribs of a dead machine. Old refinery towers floated in broken circles around a cracked processing ring, all half swallowed by the blue-white glow of the ion storm that churned beyond them. Cargo containers spun slowly through the debris field. Burned-out tugs drifted like carcasses. Static whispered across every sensor channel. It was beautiful in the way ship graveyards often were, accidental, cold, and waiting to make more ghosts. Kale tucked the Mercy into the shadow of a shattered refinery stack and powered down everything but life support and passive scans. Serit sat on the med bunk while the ship stitched her side shut with cheap foam sealant and a field patch that felt like being stapled by electricity. She did not complain. Kale found that both admirable and irritating. You're going pale, he said from the hatch. I'm blue. More pale than usual, then. An astonishing medical insight. He came in carrying 2 metal cups of something hot and suspiciously drinkable. She took one after a moment's hesitation. You could still leave, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Is this where you remind me that survival is a virtue? No. I'm too familiar with your personality for that. He leaned against the wall, cup between his hands. This is where I remind you that if you walk into a meeting with Isara then holding the only copy of the most explosive data prism in the quadrant, she wins before she speaks. Serit looked down at the prism on the bunk beside her. The smooth dark surface reflected her face back in fragments, blue skin, silver rings, eyes that were never quite as calm as she wanted them to seem. I already made copies, she said. Kale went still. You what? In the archive. A small, vicious satisfaction entered her voice. You think I'd pull down a Directorate black ledger and not scatter it into 6 blind vaults on the way out? A grin broke over his face. Commander, I may be in love with your paranoia. It's not paranoia if they built trafficking corridors under the customs decks. Fair. She sipped the drink and looked toward the sealed viewport. I sent the copies to timed relays. If I don't interrupt the chain within 12 hours, the packet blooms across half the belt. Kale stared openly now. You really walked into Veyra prepared to blackmail a government. I walked into Veyra prepared to save one child. The blackmail was administrative good fortune. He laughed again, softer this time, and the sound did something unhelpful in the cramped med bay. Serit noticed. She also noticed the line of fatigue at the edges of his mouth, the old bruise on one knuckle, the careful way he stood as though injuries were a language he refused to speak aloud. She remembered him on a different ship 2 years earlier, bleeding from the shoulder and still joking while they cut through a prison convoy lock. She remembered him walking away afterward with half the payout and all the secrets. She remembered wanting to shoot him and being disappointed she couldn't. Why did you come for me? She asked again. No deflection this time. No joke. Kale looked into his cup. Because I was the one who told you the archive existed. Serit frowned. Yes. I left something out. She waited. The child you were trying to free? The one in processing 9. He exhaled. The Directorate moved him because they were cleaning the trail behind the prism. Someone tipped them that a refugee commander with blue horns and a talent for sabotage was asking smart questions. He lifted his eyes to hers. That someone was me. The room went very still. Serit set her cup down carefully. Kale did not move. I didn't know they'd move him to acquisition holding, he said. I thought they'd just burn the archive and vanish the contractors. I thought. You thought you could sell half a secret and keep your hands clean. His jaw tightened. Yes. She stood. Pain tugged at her side, but fury held her upright better than medicine. How much did they pay you? Not enough. Answer me. 50,000 in bonded credit and a corridor pass out of the inner belt. The first strike sent him into the wall. He took it without raising a hand to block. Serit hit him again, harder. The second punch split the skin at his lip. Her horns cast hooked shadows over her face beneath the med lights and her voice came low and shaking. A child disappeared because you wanted to be richer somewhere else. I know. You sold me. I know. She drew back to hit him again and stopped only because her side threatened to tear open. Kale stayed where he was, one hand braced against the bulkhead, blood at his mouth, eyes fixed on her like he had decided not to defend himself from anything she chose to do. I went back, he said hoarsely. When I realized what they were actually moving through Veyra, I went back. The child was already gone. The archive was under purge. Then I heard your name on the station channels and knew exactly what had happened. He swallowed. I came because I made it possible. Serit's breathing turned sharp. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, very quietly, if we survive Kepri Drift, I still may kill you. Kale nodded once. Reasonable. She stared at him until the worst of the shaking passed from her hands. Good, she said. Now help me set the trap. Director Isara then arrived in a ship that looked like legality made metal. A white diplomatic cutter, sleek and narrow, escorted by 2 black interceptors that held back just outside the refinery ring. No obvious weapons. No insignia beyond the Ordo seal. The sort of vessel designed to imply that violence was always somebody else's impropriety. Serit watched from the Mercy's darkened cockpit. Tell me she didn't come alone, Kale said. She didn't. Glad we agree. Their trap was inelegant by military standards and delightful by criminal ones. Kale had wired the refinery debris around the meeting zone with old salvage thrusters and signal decoys, turning the dead ring into a maze of false ship signatures. Serit had slaved the Mercy's relay core to her timed data burst, so if her biosigns flatlined or the ship lost power, the prism copies would launch instantly. They had also hidden a compact jammer beneath the refinery hub, keyed to the interceptor's weapon locks. If Isara tried to take the prism by force, the drift would light up like a confession. The diplomatic cutter docked with the central refinery platform. A moment later a channel opened. Commander Vale, Isara said. Come alone. Serit looked at Kale. He looked back. No. Unfortunately, I agree. She holstered a sidearm beneath her coat, tucked the original prism into an inner pocket, and headed for the airlock. The refinery platform was cold and echoing, all old iron and flaking hazard paint with the ion storm flickering through cracked view panes like distant lightning underwater. Director Isara stood in the center of the docking chamber with 2 bodyguards behind her, both subtle, both unquestionably lethal. She inclined her head as Serit approached. Your file said you were taller. Serit stopped 10 feet away. Your speeches say you're human. A faint smile. Sharp. Efficient. Let's skip your charm layer. Isara's gaze moved over her, wound, posture, horns, silver rings. Assessing. Categorizing. Serit had seen that look from overseers, officers, buyers, inspectors. People who mistook observation for ownership. The prism, Isara said. Serit folded her arms. You first. Where are the children taken from Veyra Processing 9? Isara sighed as if disappointed by theatrics. Commander, the tragedy of your kind is scale. You feel each life so intensely that you never learn systems thinking. My kind. Yes. The displaced, the conquered, the proud remnants. You still believe cruelty requires hatred. It doesn't. It requires logistics. Her expression remained calm. Those children were moved to labor redistribution centers. Productive placements. Better than starving in station alleys, certainly. Rage flashed so hot through Serit she almost drew her weapon on instinct. Isara noticed and nodded slightly, like a lecturer pleased by a predictable reaction. There it is. You built a market out of refugees. I built continuity out of collapse. The belt runs because someone accepts ugly arithmetic. Arithmetic. Serit's voice sharpened. Is that what you call auctioning families? I call it governance. The bodyguards shifted, reading tension. The ion storm flickered blue through the cracked glass. Somewhere in the platform steel, ancient pipes knocked softly like bones tapping together. Serit let out one slow breath. No, she said. You call it governance because slavery still sounds ugly in polished rooms. For the first time, the director's composure thinned. Careful. Serit smiled without warmth. No. Isara's eyes chilled. You are standing in a dead refinery with one outdated sidearm and a leaking wound, speaking to the woman who decides which worlds receive grain ships and which migration fleets are granted fuel. You should be careful on instinct. Serit took one step closer. And you, she said, should have checked whether I came here to bargain. Behind her, somewhere out in the drift, Kale triggered Phase 1. The refinery platform lights died. Total darkness swallowed the chamber for half a second. Then emergency strips came on in red, and a dozen false ship signatures bloomed across local scans. The diplomatic cutter's alarms shrieked. The escort interceptors moved in. The jammer woke beneath the platform. Isara turned sharply. What did you do? Serit smiled fully this time. I made you public. She drew the prism and held it up just long enough for the director to see it. Then Serit crushed it under her heel. Isara's mask broke. You fool. No. Serit stepped back toward the docking collar as the platform trembled with maneuvering ships outside. I told you. Copies. One of the bodyguards lunged. Serit shot him twice center mass and threw herself sideways as the second bodyguard opened fire. Bolts tore through the red gloom. Glass exploded behind her. The chamber decompressed in a shrieking rush. Isara was pulled toward the breach and slammed one hand onto a support rail. Her bodyguards lost footing entirely. One vanished into the drift, spinning silently into ion-lit dark. Serit's mag boots caught just before the shattered viewport. She grabbed a cable trunk with both hands, teeth bared against the pressure drag, and looked across the chamber at Isara clinging to the rail with all the elegant dignity of a drowning empress. The director's hair had come loose. Blood ran from one temple. Her eyes met Serit's with naked hatred. Help me, Isara gasped. Serit said nothing. Outside, Kale's voice crackled through the emergency channel. Commander, I have 6 hostile signatures, 2 interceptor lock attempts, and what appears to be the beginning of a very expensive lawsuit. Serit kept staring at Isara. Do you know, she said over the roaring air, how many times people like you said, help me, after signing orders that buried families. Isara's grip slipped. I can stop the kill orders, she said. I can clear the registry lists. I can. Can you bring back Belash? The director faltered. Can you return my brother? Nothing. Serit's face had gone very calm. That's what I thought. Then she triggered the data burst. Across half the belt, hidden relays opened. Ledger files, contractor chains, transit maps, payment proofs, biometric inventories, ministerial signatures, sealed comms, everything in the Veyra archive. Erupted into public channels, pirate nets, union frequencies, tribunal caches, militia boards, and 1,000 private servers hungry for scandal. The Ordo Directorate's secrets went from valuable to uncontrollable in less than 3 seconds. Kale hooped over comms. Oh, that is beautiful. In the chamber, every console woke at once with incoming alerts. Isara heard them. Something in her face changed then. Not fear of death. Fear of irrelevance. Of losing command of the narrative she had treated as reality. Her hand slipped again. Serit watched. And let go of mercy. The director vanished into the breach. The decompression seals finally slammed down in segmented shutters, cutting the roar off all at once. Silence flooded in behind it. Serit stood alone in the emergency red, chest heaving, wound burning, broken glass glittering around her boots like frozen rain. Commander? Kale said. She looked once at the sealed breach. Then turned for the dock. Pick me up, she said. We're not done. The belt did not change in a day. But it cracked. That mattered. By the time the Dreg's Mercy cleared Kepri Drift, every major port was on fire with information warfare. Ordo officials denied. Contractors vanished. Dockworkers rioted. Arbitration courts froze freight accounts. Refugee registries blew open. Names long buried under transit codes resurfaced. Families found sale records for the lost. Militia groups began intercepting labor transports in open defiance of local law. Governments that had quietly profited started loudly demanding investigations. No empire collapses because it deserves to. It collapses because enough people see the machinery at once. Serit stood in the cockpit and watched the message traffic blossom across the screens like a storm front. Somewhere in the flood, she found what mattered most. Processing 9 transfer logs. Children rerouted from Veyra. Destination, Moro Deep Relay. Alive. Not safe. But alive. Her throat closed before she could stop it. Kale, leaning in the hatch with a fresh bandage over his split lip, read her expression and did not speak for once. After a long moment he asked, "Found them?" She nodded. The boy too? Yes. Relief hit so hard it hurt more than the wound. For several seconds all Serit could do was brace one hand on the console and breathe. We can reach Moro Deep in 19 hours if the lanes stay chaotic, Kale said carefully. Less if I start bribing traffic control before they know I'm wanted. She let out a shaky laugh. Wanted. They both were, now. More than before. But wanted by whom was changing fast, and that changed everything. Serit turned to him. You realize you're implicated in all of this. I assumed as much around the time we detonated a diplomatic career. You could leave at the next blind port. I could. He shrugged. But then who would admire your increasingly unlawful heroics? She studied him. He looked tired, bruised, sincere in a way that made him harder to classify than she preferred. Trust did not come naturally to Serit Vale. Not after camps, contracts, militias, and polite men with ledgers. But there were gradations between trust and execution, and Kale had spent the last day moving himself out of one category and not quite into the other. You are still not forgiven, she said. That seems fair. You sold information that got children moved. Yes. You also came back into a Directorate lockdown to pull me out of a kill box. He tilted his head. A mixed performance. Don't push it. His smile gentled. Wouldn't dream of it. The Mercy rolled through open dark, stars sliding slow and patient beyond the cockpit glass. Behind them, the belt burned with revelations. Ahead of them, Morrow Deep waited. Another relay, another cage, another place where systems had learned to hide cruelty behind procedure. Serit touched the silver rings at the base of one horn, an old reflex when memory got too loud. Clan markers. Morning markers. Proof she had belonged somewhere before the corridors and raids and station fires. She thought of her grandmother's voice under the reef lanterns. We are currents, child. When rock blocks the way, the sea does not apologize. It learns the shape of force and returns stronger. For the first time in years, the future did not look like a tunnel. It looked like a campaign. Not one battle. Not one rescue. Not one lucky escape from a station that should have swallowed her. A war. Kale watched her from the hatch. That expression usually means I'm about to regret staying. Serit glanced at him. Probably. Wonderful. I was hoping for purpose with a side of danger. You'll get both. She looked back at the stars. Morrow Deep first. Then Bell Ash Files. Then the labor routes through the Halcyon Choke. Then every polished office that signed people away by weight and age. He stared at her, then laughed softly under his breath. You're going to tear through the whole system. She smiled, and this time there was no bitterness in it, only motion. Yes, Serit said. I think I am. Alarms did not ring. No one was chasing them for the moment. The ship hummed steadily around them as Kale slid into the co-pilot seat beside her and brought up a map full of illicit corridors and possible allies. On the main screen, the route to Morrow Deep glowed a quiet green. Behind them, the secrets of the powerful spread too far to contain. Ahead, somewhere among relay lights and prison manifests, a child waited who had once believed no one was coming. Serit Vale set her jaw, blue face reflected in the cockpit glass, horns casting dark crescents against the stars. Then the Dreg's Mercy turned toward the next fight. And the belt, whether it was ready or not, began to learn her name.